In 1969, a group of astronauts changed the world. They walked on the moon.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
In 1972, our journey ended. We've never been back. 2010 begins a year of change. Private companies are working on next-generation spaceships. Governments are looking to go back to the moon and on to Mars. It's time to look up and dream again. It's time to push humans into the cosmos. It's time to educate and engage the planet. It's time for Spacevidcast.
Welcome to Spacevidcast 328 for Friday, August 20th, 2010. This is Spacevidcast episode 100. We have done 100 live shows week after week. Oh my goodness, that is just awesome. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. With me, as always, is the beautiful, wonderful, and highly nutritious Carrie Ann Higginbotham. We'll be your Spacevidcasters for the 100th time. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
No.
No?
No, actually, it's your 100th time.
It's your 99th time. That's correct. It is your 99th time. So we'll have to have another party next week. Tonight we've got an awesome show for you. We've got author and moon extraordinaire guru. What else would you call him? He's just like super ultra awesome guy. Andrew Chaikin, who wrote Voices from the Moon. Mm-hmm. And we actually met him, I don't know if he remembers this, we met him at ISTC 2009 where he signed our copy of somewhere. Hang on, we're going to find this for you.
There it is.
There we go. So we've got a signed copy. Now we're not giving this one away because he actually personalized it.
He signed it to us.
He signed it to us. So we have been trying to get him on the show for quite some time. And we're excited to have him on for our 100th episode. And we'll bring him on in just a moment. I did want to touch on a couple new things that are happening here at Spacevidcast to go along with episode 100. BZ Wing Zero from the chat room, right here, that side of the chat room, is starting a new thread idea. Mm-hmm. It's called an open thread. And what this is we're going to create a new post on Spacevidcast. In fact, it should have gone live just a couple minutes ago, where you start a discussion and you just talk. It's kind of like a forum post. But instead of being in a forum, it's actually in the comments for the thread. And so BZ Wing Zero will be running that. You should see that live right now. If you're watching the live show, don't click on it because then you'll lose your video. But when you were done with the show, go ahead and click on that. It'll be pretty cool. We're going to try one once a week, sometime around showtime. Just have a discussion. Nothing's off the board. Just have a great topic and talk about cool space-related stuff. So that's going to be really cool. Coming out very shortly, most likely this weekend, is going to be a new feature of Spacevidcast called Spacevidcast Founders. It's an extension of Spacevidcast Epic. Now what Founders are is it's a one-time subscription to Epic. It's a lifetime membership to any programs that Spacevidcast creates, even above and outside of Spacevidcast Epic, and there are only a certain number of seats available for Founders. Now, Spacevidcast Founders is god-awful expensive. It's very, very expensive. The whole point behind Founders is that you're helping found Spacevidcast. You're helping build it from the ground up and give us the money necessary to go to these conferences and these events, and in exchange, you get some exclusive stuff that only founder members get. You also get a lifetime access to all Epic subscriptions, and it's a one-time thing. You buy it once, you're a founder for life. And like I said, limited seats for that, so it's not like anyone can just come in and get it, and the price of Founders will go up every single year. So the earlier you get in, the less that will cost. We'll talk about that more later in the show. And the thing that two things that I'm really excited about. First, Jepif from our chat room has been making audio podcasts. And it's Ask the, I don't really know what to call him, Ask the Expert, I guess?
I think so.
And he has been doing...
Ask the Jepif.
Ask the Jepif. And he has been doing a fantastic job with those, where he'll just do an audio podcast on just very common questions of things that maybe you didn't know, and It's really cool. So go to the podcast section on the website and listen. We're releasing one of these per week or so, and so you should see a new one shortly this week from Jepov. And he does those entirely himself. And he actually listened to the new intro coming up. That's my little hint. Listen to the new intro. It's pretty awesome. So those will be coming up this next week. And the thing that I'm most excited about is doesn't have a name yet. We're calling it right now Spacevidcast Archives, for lack of a better term. And we're going to give away 3 months of Spacevidcast Epic for free to anyone who comes up with a really great name for this. And what the Spacevidcast Archives is a collection of files. It's like, it's a collection of files from basically the STS program, Apollo, Mercury, Gemini, I already said Apollo.
And the Apollo program.
And Apollo twice. And it's just gigs and gigs and gigs of content. I think STS has something like 1,600 documents alone. And it goes over just about anything you can imagine from these programs. It's pretty awesome. They're PDF files, they're video files, or anything that NASA may have. We're 80-20 rule, so 80% of it will be available for free, 20% will be available only to Spacevidcast Epic subscribers. And we have had a fantastic team, because there are so many files, we've had a fantastic team of people working on this behind the scenes to make this all go. Jepov worked on that as well, but it's really led by Wo Jeffrey, and then Jepov, a Geek Mom, is working on it, and then Flying Jenny is also helping with any potential ITAR-related issues we may run into. And it is going to be an epic of epic awesomeness.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so watch for that shortly. Now, you're not going to see it right away because there's still some more work that needs to be done. In addition to naming it, and by the way, email me. I know the chat room's abuzz with all that stuff right now, but email me with your potential names, and Wo, Carrie-Ann, and I will decide on a winner. In addition to getting 3 months of free Epic for that, we have a layout problem. Displaying this much data, because there's so much stuff, we're talking about thousands and thousands of items, is very difficult. So we need a graphic designer to help with the layout. Now, we'll release even if we don't have the design kind of in place, but for any graphic designer that is able to help us out with that, again, 3 months of Epic for free for that one. To help make that all go. So that's going to be really, really cool. And to give you a taste of that, we have got files from the archives, I think is what, Wo, is that what you're calling it? Tell me in the chat room, I don't remember what you're calling it. From the archives, something like that. And that's available.
Says yes.
Yep, that's
from the archives.
From the archives. And that's available now. And what that will be is every show is going to have some of the archive files attached to it, starting with episode 10328. So starting with this show, you're going to start seeing some files attached, and they're just going to be anything that we happen to talk about from the archives. So we posted right in the show itself. Spacevidcast Epic members, you get a little bit more, but it'll also be available for anyone who's not an Epic subscriber also. And one last housekeeping note before we get into Andrew. I'm doing this fast so we can get to Andrew, because I want to get to Andrew. One last housekeeping note is we're trying to get 20 transcribers. And you will be responsible for 15 minutes of transcribing per month, approximately, depending upon how long the shows go. 15 minutes of transcribing per month, and so long as you're an active transcriber, you get Epic for free. It's just a month-over-month thing. So if you do 15 minutes worth of work for us in transcribing per month, and there are only 20 seats available, then you will get Epic for free for however many months that you do that. And the whole idea is we want to transcribe absolutely every single episode, and we've got Hantner. Right, hang on, lean back, see he's right there. There he is. Hantner working on this, a lot of this solo. And if we get 20 people, then it's only 2 to 4 minutes per live show that you have to transcribe, right, which is way easier than trying to do 40 minutes all by yourself. So it's not a lot of work, and if you can't afford Spacevidcast Epic, no problem, 15 minutes a month, and whop, bam, boom, off you go. On that note, let's bring our guest on.
All right.
Oh yeah, it's all you.
You want me to reintroduce Andrew?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let's read. He's worthy of dual introduction.
So, for those of you who may not be familiar with Andrew Chaikin, shame on you, first of all.
For shame. What's wrong with you people?
Andrew is a space writer. He was an editor for Space.com for a while. He writes and produces these books. This one he actually did with Victoria Cole.
This is our favorite because this was our first that we got from him.
Right. So lots of pictures, but lots of really great stories. And he's
we like pictures. What can I say?
They're pretty. He's interviewed almost all of the original Apollo and Mercury Gemini astronauts. and which one of his books inspired the HBO 12. There, can't do it. There we are.
It's hard to do, right?
It
With
is.
the lights this way now?
Yeah. From the Earth to the Moon, the 12-part series on HBO with Tom Hanks, and just a really incredible series. If you guys haven't seen that, please do that. And he actually does have a little bit of a cameo. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he gets to be a little reporter.
Ooh.
Yeah, at some point. Anyway, so enough talking about Andrew. Let's talk to Andrew. Andrew, welcome to our 100th show.
Thank you. Very nice to be with you. We've been talking about doing this, and we finally pulled it off, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, like forever, it seems, I think.
Excellent. Well, I'm happy to be here, and congratulations on show number 100.
Booyah! And what better guest to have us on for show 100 than the guy who literally, it's been like over a year that we have been trying to get you on the show.
Yeah.
Here I am. It's worth the wait.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Andrew, you've written a number of books. Is it 7, is my understanding?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, it's something like that. I mean, I did A Man on the Moon. I did A History of Flight for the National Air and Space Museum. Did a book about 11 years ago with Alan Bean of his paintings. More recently, my wife and I did Voices from the Moon, which you held up, and also a children's book on Apollo, which is also illustrated with Alan Bean's paintings. And if I may, is it okay if I plug?
Please.
Oh, yeah,
Please
absolutely.
do. Yes.
Because I really do want people to know about this in all seriousness. It's called A Passion for Mars. And I'll see if I can get this to show up at all.
There you go.
And I spent 4 years on this one. And, you know, Mars is very near and dear to my heart, as it is to, I'm sure, many people watching. And, you know, in the book, I talk about people who I have known and who I have written about, in some cases covering Mars missions. I was actually a student intern on the first Mars landing, Viking 1, when I was in college. And the man who was the leader of the imaging team on Viking, a geologist named Thomas Much, M-U-T-C-H, was actually a huge influence on me. I'll show you a picture of him during Viking. Here he is being interviewed at JPL. And he was just a tremendous influence on so many people who have become movers and shakers in Mars exploration. Here am I with the intern group, sitting there with a rock in my hand in 1976 at age 20. But you know, I also cover the Mars rovers. I spent a couple of weeks at JPL with the Mars rover team in 2004. I cover this whole question of whether there's life on Mars, the meteorite from Mars. I covered that in great detail when I was writing about it for Popular Science and other magazines. And so this is really, you know, a kind of a work from the heart for me. And it sums up a lot of what I think is important about exploration and Mars in particular. And so I hope you'll all look it up. It's on my website, on my books page, which is just my name, andrewchaikin.com.
So
and if you do read it and you do like it, send me an email and let me know how you like it. I'd love to hear from you.
For sure.
Let's talk about Mars for a minute. You seem passionate about Mars. Why Mars?
I think Mars has got the power to grab people by the lapels and not let go. And it basically, Ray Bradbury, I think, said it best. He said, you know, Mars is a way station on humanity's road to immortality. And I think what that means is that, just as you guys have said many times, we're in this to become an interplanetary species. And if we're going to do that, the place where we got to go to cut the cord with Earth and really start leaving the cradle, as Tsiolkovsky said all those years ago, the great Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, if we're going to do that, we got to go to Mars. And it really is, I think it's a Mount Everest for the whole human species. You know, it's this absolutely staggeringly difficult exploration mission, but also to not only to keep people healthy to get there, to live on Mars, to deal with the radiation, the psychological separation from Earth. I mean, when you're on Mars, your radio signals are going to take anywhere between 9 and 20 minutes just to go one way. And that means that you will not have a real-time conversation with anybody except the people who are on Mars with you for most of the duration of the mission. And I think for all of these reasons, it's just such an enormous technical challenge, but it has such monumental, really, significance to us as a species that, we just have to do it. And I think we will do it. I just don't know whether I'll live to see it. I hope some of the folks watching here will, and maybe even carry it out.
How do you think we'll do it? Just general broad strokes. Is this going to be a government thing? Is it going to be private? Is it just going to be some individual who rises up and says, we are going to Mars, gosh darn it?
I really can't predict. I can tell you this, though, that what happens in the next 5 to 10 years is going to profoundly change the landscape of space exploration, especially when it comes to human spaceflight. There are people out there who are cooking up amazing things. And we've seen some of them already. I mean, we've seen the work that Elon Musk and SpaceX are doing to try and create a capability of bringing people to and from low Earth orbit. Other people have even more grand plans. Now, that doesn't mean that they'll achieve them. It doesn't mean that there won't be failures. All of those things can be true. But I think that, when I think of the human desire to go to Mars and also go back to the moon and go to near-Earth asteroids and any of the destinations beyond low Earth orbit, I think of the blade of grass that grows through the crack in the concrete and refuses to take no for an answer. And that's what human beings are fundamentally. They're an unstoppable force. And so I have great optimism in the long term. And I think in the near term, we're going to see some really very inspiring, very powerful forces, very powerful people who step up to the plate and change this game, I hope.
What do you think we can do to get to Mars sooner? Because now that we're talking about it, because that is kind of a passion for Ben and I myself. So,
yeah, I mean, I think the road to Mars begins at the launch pad to LEO, to low Earth orbit. I mean, I really think that we're not going to go to Mars until we solve the problem of relatively routine, relatively affordable, relatively reliable access to low Earth orbit. And, we still haven't done that. The Russians have come the closest of anybody to doing that with the Soyuz. So, I would love to see us, whether it's SpaceX or someone else, develop something that's really robust and reliable to get us to and from low Earth orbit. Once we've got that foothold, and then folks like Bigelow can start putting up inflatable habitats and things like that. There can be really, literally the beginning of those hotels in space that we've all been waiting for ever since 2001: A Space Odyssey, right? Mm-hmm. It's got to start with that, though. It's got to start with that routine access to the near space environment. But once we do that, watch out, because there's so many neat ideas for how to advance the state of the art in space travel. There's a guy who I'm sure you've heard of, Franklin Chang Diaz, mm-hmm. who's a former shuttle astronaut and working on a nuclear-powered ion rocket. It's called the Variable Specific Impulse Magnetoplasma Rocket. It uses a magnetic nozzle instead of a metal nozzle, so that you can fire it indefinitely and it won't wear out. He says that if he can get that thing perfected, it can cut the travel time to Mars in half. And it would be the equivalent of going from the airplane to, it'd be the equivalent of going from the balloon, where you're at the mercy of the winds, to the airplane, where you can just point it in the direction you want to go and go. So instead of being at the mercy of orbital mechanics, we would just be able to point at the planet we want to go to and go. And, I think, that's just one of countless ideas out there that people have been working on. And so, like I say, I'm very hopeful that eventually we'll solve these problems.
Well, yeah, no, I'm 100% there with you. So now I'm going to pull a Ben a little bit and back up to the beginning and say, how did you first become interested in space?
Oh God, I don't know that I know the answer to that. The only thing I can tell you is that when I was 5 years old, my mom took me to the planetarium in New York City, the venerable Hayden Planetarium, which was a wonderful old Art Deco enclosure with all kinds of great exhibits, and it was magical. And I grew up in the New York area on Long Island, so we went there when I was 5 for the Christmas show at the planetarium. And according to my mom, while we were waiting online to go in, I was lecturing everybody else on the line about the planets. So I was already really hooked by the time I was 5 years old, and it never left me. And of course, when I was 5, it was 1961 when people were just starting to go into space. And so, I kind of grew up along with the space program, and what an incredible time to be a kid and to grow up. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a more exciting time. So I really feel like I've lived a charmed life in getting to live through that, witness it, and then grow up to become a historian and a storyteller of space, that I get to sit down with the people who've made this history and then tell their stories to the rest of the world.
For sure. So you do a lot of speaking, but you started off writing books, is my understanding, right?
Well, I started off writing magazine articles, actually, because I was an editor at Sky and Telescope magazine, if you've ever heard of that. It's still being published. It's still considered the sort of monthly Bible for amateur astronomers. And that was where I started my journalism career way back in 1980. And, at that time, the shuttle program was just getting started. I was covering the early shuttle missions, covering the Voyager encounters to the outer planets, started writing for other magazines. And then around about 1984, I got the idea to do a Man on the Moon and tell the stories of all the guys that went to the moon. And that took me 8 years. By the time that was done, it was the beginning of 94, and I was, I'd been working on that book for 8 years and had been freelance for all that time. And so that's where I got into writing books, and that's what I'm still doing. But actually, one of the things I'm really enjoying now is teaching. I've been doing a lot of teaching for NASA. They have a program for their engineers that's kind of like a continuing education program. And actually, if anybody from JSC or KSC or Marshall is watching, next month, around the middle of September, I'll be at JSC to give my space history course. And if you go to your local, it's called Saturn, SATERN, you can, if you're a civil servant, you can sign up for it. But other than that, I just love doing school visits. I love things like this, where I can just kind of talk about the subject that I've always loved, and see if I can inspire other people to get excited about it too.
That's awesome. I love that.
Well, I mean, it's part of the reason why we're here.
Right.
But you guys certainly do your part.
Well, as do you. I mean, seriously, look, the whole thing was inspired. This is some of the best TV I've ever seen. This was epically awesome, and the whole thing is inspired from your vision of everything that you wrote. I mean, it was
and a lot more. I can only take credit for some of the source material, but I got to say, the experience of working on the miniseries From the Earth to the Moon was inspiring to me, because I saw this whole team of Hollywood professionals come together and get totally fired up about telling the story of Apollo in a way that really hadn't been done before on television. Mm-hmm. And I feel that the folks who did the miniseries, they really recreated the spirit of Apollo right there on the set, because they were absolutely committed to making this thing as good as it could possibly be. And that's what Apollo was all about. It was, 400,000 people working for a decade or more to do something that seemed like science fiction. And they all knew that they'd never do it. They'd never get to the moon without giving their all, and absolutely 110%. And by God, they did it. And so that's why, 40 years later, we're still telling that story. It's not just about the missions and what the astronauts experienced and the discoveries they made on the moon. It's also the story of how 400,000 people got together and actually pulled that off.
That's so cool. It's one of my favorites.
What, the miniseries? Or
Yeah.
Well, I'm partial to anything that's space related.
Don't watch it for my acting, though. That's do not watch it for my acting.
I actually didn't know that you were in it until I was reading, some bio stuff and some Wikipedia stuff on you, and then I saw that in there. So now I am going to go back just to very specifically find you in it.
Now,
The
you
host
mentioned...
of Beat the Press, end of episode 1, with the immortal line, Miss Hedges, a follow-up.
You mentioned Apollo, specifically going to the moon, not just Apollo, because it was a bunch of programs, took 110%. Is that something that we're going to be able to accomplish again within our lifetime again, essentially? I mean, going to the moon was kind of once one of those great humanity, everyone pulling together and just making it happen. That doesn't happen very often.
Well,
Can it be done again in our lifetime?
I would say that it happens on a smaller scale a lot in different missions. Not only, and by the way, not only in the space program, it happens in life in all kinds of areas. I mean, the people who go down to Haiti and try and help the victims of the earthquake, people who are doing things all over the world to just make life better on the planet, whatever it is. But if I can go back to A Passion for Mars for a second, Steve Squires, who was the chief scientist on the rover mission, said to me that it was passion that got those rovers to the launch pad. And you would not believe the kinds of technical problems that they had to deal with to get those rovers built and tested, the kind of political problems that so many of the missions have had to deal with. Even during the missions, there are malfunctions that people have to deal with. Mars is, it's a really unforgiving place. It pretty much eats spacecraft. And the majority of missions over time, if you look historically, something like 60% of the missions that have gone to Mars from the US and other countries have failed. It's not a great success rate all told, but the people who do succeed are able to succeed because they give 110%. It's that kind of commitment, it's that kind of dedication, and I think you have to have, for people to work that hard, they've got to feel like they're doing something that's one of the most important things they'll ever do in their life. That's the way people felt on Apollo. That's the way people have felt on the Mars rover mission. I'm sure it's the way people will feel when they start going back to the moon, however we manage to do that. And I am sure they will feel that way when we start sending people to Mars. They've got to feel that way. And that's what Apollo taught us, that, great things happen when people are inspired to reach beyond their limits.
Well, how are we going to get that again? In the Apollo era, there was this, first off, we had the Cold War going on. I mean, there was a big political backing behind it. But even so, we had never really stepped foot off of our planet. We have now. And so the question that I'm constantly trying to answer is, why? Who cares? Why should we go to space? Why should we go to Mars? Who cares?
Yeah, and the thing is, you can't go back to the Cold War. You can't relive the 1960s. There have been too many people who've tried to recreate the conditions that gave us Apollo, right? I mean, they said, gee, if there could just be a presidential speech, and it would just mobilize everybody to do this thing. Well, not really, because Apollo was a unique event. It was a kind of a substitute for a shooting war as part of the Cold War that we didn't have to fight, because we did it a different way. We did it with Apollo. We did it as a kind of a peaceful alternative to war. And once we beat the Russians to the moon, that whole political justification just went away, and it's never been back. And so I'm almost feeling like, there's two possibilities here. One is that some threat will just force us to get our act together to become a multi-planet species, because we'll have no choice. We'll know that if we'll finally come to our senses and realize that if we only have one planet to live on, we're sort of sitting ducks for any one of a number of calamities, including eventually an asteroid that could slam into the Earth that's big enough to do some real damage. And even before then, we've got to worry about other, asteroids that could wipe out cities, not planets. But still, eventually we're going to come to that realization. Now, the other thing that I think is this blade of grass growing through the concrete. The people who are just in love with this, always have been, who understand that this is part of humanity's future, who understand that it's good for human beings to explore. It's good for humans to do hard things. That's part of what Kennedy was trying to say when he said, we choose to go to the moon and do the other things in this decade, not because they're easy, but because they're hard. He said that as a way of verbalizing the fact that, exploration is good for societies. So I think there are people who have that spirit who will, by hook or by crook, make these things happen eventually. As far as right now and the general populace, I don't have any magic bullet. People have a lot on their plate, and they have a lot of concerns, and I don't blame them for not necessarily paying attention to what the space program is doing. However, having said that, if you show people what comes out of space exploration, if you show them what we're learning about Mars, what we're learning about the universe from Hubble and the other great observatories and the other astronomy missions, if you show them what we're learning about the Earth from the Earth Observing System satellites that NASA has, it's just absolutely astonishing to look at the footage of, there's a video on the web that shows hurricanes over something like an 8-year span from some of these Earth Observing System satellites, and it's sort of a time-lapse thing, and you see these hurricanes wheeling across the Caribbean and the Atlantic. And the fact that we live at a time when we're able to gather that kind of perspective, or just the pictures from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, where you're able to fly down, go to Google Earth and look at the Mars in Google Earth, or the Moon in Google Earth, and you can fly down and look at individual boulders on the slopes of mountains. We live in an extraordinary time for vicarious exploration that's only going to get better and better as the technology improves. So, I think that I think a lot of it is grassroots. I think you have to have face-to-face contact with young people to change their lives and sort of pass the spark along. And that's one of the reasons why I try and do as many school visits as I can. I have a page on my website that is all about my school visits, and I just, am always hoping that people will see that and invite me to come give a talk, and I can pay some bills in the process. But I love doing that, and I think anybody out there who's passionate about this, like we are, you need to be out there talking about why this stuff matters. It's not just going to happen someday magically because somebody in power decides to make it happen.
So how do we change perception, right? I mean, right now you go out in the media and you've got tech out there everywhere. You've got iPhones, right? Story is iPhone, and ooh, they've got an 8-megapixel camera now. Media flash, months and months of it's got a better camera, FaceTime, right? And we're sitting here doing remarkable things with LRO and LCross, where we've got new rovers going to the moon, just amazing world-changing things, but you don't see it. Everyone's so caught up in, is it 5 megapixels or 8 meg? I want the one with the bigger GBs. How do we get them to stop? I don't want to say stop caring about the little tech that, really lasts a year and then they move on. How do we get people to stop?
Some of it is the content that's being offered on those tech devices. I mean, all kinds of folks, including NASA, are putting out stuff for the iPhone and the iPad and I don't even know what else. I was at NASA Ames recently, and they told me about some of the stuff that they've been doing with Google and with other providers to put out, stuff on social media, and so some of it is going to come to us through those content sources. But like I say, I'm just a really big believer in face-to-face contact, whether it's literally face-to-face or virtually face-to-face like we're doing now. The passion of a human being being transmitted to another goes a long way, I think. So let's all be out there doing that. That's kind of the best answer I have, and show them the new images from LRO and Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter and Hubble. Explain to them why they're cool, and don't even need to show them the images. Take them out under a starry summer sky. I mean, I live in southern Vermont where you can see the Milky Way when you go outside.
That's cool.
But even if you don't live in one of those places, you can still see the moon. You can see the bright planets. Venus has been out. Jupiter's out in the early morning now. Just crank your head back and look up and get that sense of wonder about being on a ball of rock that's going around a medium-sized star in a relatively average galaxy among hundreds of billions of stars in hundreds of billions of galaxies. And you start to make an impact on people.
I sometimes argue that just about everyone is passionate about exploration in space. They just don't know it yet. They need someone to light that fire within them. And,
I like that very much. That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah. So where can people find you online, get your books, get your wares, as it were?
AndrewChaikin.com is my website, and you can email me through that. You can get my books through that. I have been a very, very poor blogger. Someday I may get back to my blog, which is called Chaikin Space. I try to post when I can on Facebook and Twitter. The more of you guys that can spread the message about, I'm really here, I've done a lot to tell the story of what we've done so far, but I really feel like from here on in, my most important work is going to be trying to spread the message of why it's important to keep making new history, to keep doing things that are so inspiring that 40 years from now, we'll be talking about them.
Absolutely. All right, Andrew, thank you very much for joining us. Stay with us if you don't mind for a few more minutes. I'd like to bring you back for a little bit in post-show. Got a few people that had some questions.
Thanks again.
Oh, thank you.
100th show.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you. It's awesome. I do want to point out a couple things. You have the ability to inspire people. We chose to do it through Spacevidcast, but you don't have to build a huge online show to do this stuff. It really can just be one-on-one, talking to people. And that could be something as simple as grabbing a telescope, going out to your street corner, and just inviting people over to look up at the stars with you. Or it could be, if you want to get some non-space people interested, Yuri's Night's coming up in 7 months. I know, that seems like it's a long way away, but it's not that long. Yep. That is epically awesome. Here, I'll take that so that you can go back and direct again. Let me finish my rant, and then we'll hold it back up. That's awesome. I love that we have a cake. So you can, do a Yuri's Night party. It's simple to start even if it's 5 people that you get together, and you don't have to talk about space the whole time.
Dwight had one up by himself.
That's awkward. There are so many things you can do, and it just takes a little bit. I really do think most people love space and exploration. They just need to remember that they love space and exploration. I know that's how I got rekindled. And as a kid, I was all about space, and then I grew out of it. Well, it took something like STS to bring it back. Happy 100 shows, everyone. We wouldn't be here without you. We're ecstatic to have such a fantastic group of friends and community that makes this all go. The archive program is all the community, right? I didn't start it. Jeffrey basically said, "Hi, I'm going to do this for you now," and he did all of it. And well, not all. I'm sorry. He started it, and then we've got Jeff
Mom and Jeff and Flying Jenny.
And that's an example. Jeff did the same thing. He's like, "I'm going to make you some podcasts now."
Yeah.
And BZ Wing Zero. He's like, "Hey, here's another way." And that happened. I realized there are so many people in the chat room and in the community on YouTube, whether you can't watch live, that are helping to inspire people across the planet, and that's why we're here. We're here to inspire people, not just the U.S. Space is for all of humanity. It's not for a single country. It's for everyone to grow. And I realize I'm being super cheesy, but you know what? It's our 100th show, and this is.
And you can tell because we have a cake.
We have a cake. Calf, that is awesome. So who did the? Did you guys make that happen, or who? Ta-da. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us. Join us next week. Is next week our Space Up show?
Next week is our Space Up show and my 100th show.
And her 100th show.
So I should have another cake.
Next week, we will be broadcasting live from
DC.
Washington, D.C. for Space Up. If you can't make it to Space Up, we'll be broadcasting what we can. However, find a way to make it. If you want to learn about ways you can engage people, you're going to find those things at Space Up. If you want to be next to people who are making a difference, those people,
they're going to be at Space Up.
Is going to be at Space Up.
Yeah.
They're going to be there. Find a way to make it. It's going to be awesome. And if you can't make it, please join us live in the chat room and participate and be part of something.
And make your own Space Up.
And absolutely, if you can't make it to DC, you know what? Maybe that means that there needs to be a Space Up in your community, and you can make your very own Space Up. The whole idea here is to get people engaged and excited about space again. That happens through parties like Yuri's Night. That happens through unconferences like Space Up. That happens through sidewalk telescopes, and that happens through you going out in the street and making a difference. And as Andrew said, one-on-one contact. It's very easy to do. It doesn't cost you anything, and you could forever change humanity. It only takes one voice to change the world. On that note, thank you for watching. We'll see you guys next week. Hope you like the new set.
In 1969, he asked on the moon. In 1970, our journey. We've never.
Vidcast.
Welcome to Spacevidcast 328 for Friday, August 20th, 2010. This is Spacevidcast Episode 100. We have done 100 live shows week after week. Oh my goodness. That is just awesome. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. With me, as always, is the beautiful, wonderful, and highly nutritious Carrie Ann Higginbotham. We'll be your Space Vidcasters for the 100th time. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
No,
No?
actually, it's your 100th time.
It's your 99th time. That's correct. It is your 99th time. So we'll have to have another party next week. Tonight we've got an awesome show for you. We've got author and moon extraordinaire guru. What else would you call him? He's just like super ultra awesome guy. Andrew Chaikin, who wrote Voices from the Moon. Mm-hmm. And we actually met him, I don't know if he remembers this, we met him at ISTC 2009 where he signed our copy of somewhere. Hang on, we're going to find this for you.
There it is.
There we go. So we've got a signed copy. Now we're not giving this one away because he actually personalized it.
He signed it to us.
He signed it to us. So we have been trying to get him on the show for quite some time. And we're excited to have him on for our 100th episode. And we'll bring him on in just a moment. I did want to touch on a couple new things that are happening here at Spacevidcast to go along with episode 100. BZ Wing Zero from the chat room, right here, that side of the chat room, is starting a new thread idea. Now, Spacevidcast Founders is god-awful expensive. It's very, very expensive. The whole point behind Founders is that you're helping found Spacevidcast. You're helping build it from the ground up and give us the money necessary to go to these conferences and these events, and in exchange, you get some exclusive stuff that only founder members get. You also get a lifetime access to all Epic subscriptions, and it's a one-time thing. You buy it once, you're a founder for life. And like I said, limited seats for that, so it's not like anyone can just come in and get it, and the price of Founders will go up every single year. So the earlier you get in, the less that will cost. We'll talk about that more later in the show. And the thing that two things that I'm really excited about. First, Jepif from our chat room has been making audio podcasts. And it's Ask the, I don't really know what to call him, Ask the Expert, I guess?
I think so.
And he has been doing...
Ask the Jepif.
Ask the Jepif. And he has been
In 1969, a group of astronauts changed the world. They walked on the moon.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
In 1972, our journey ended. We've never been back. 2010 begins a year of change. Private companies are working on next-generation spaceships. Governments are looking to go back to the moon and on to Mars. It's time to look up and dream again. It's time to push humans into the cosmos. It's time to educate and engage the planet. It's time for space.
Called an open thread, and what this is we're going to create a new post on Spacevidcast. In fact, it should have gone live just a couple minutes ago, where you start a discussion and you just talk. It's kind of like a forum post, but instead of being in a forum, it's actually in the comments for the thread. And so BZ Wing Zero will be running that. You should see that live right now. If you're watching the live show, don't click on it because then you'll lose your video. But when we're done with the show, go ahead and click on that. It'll be pretty cool. We're going to try one once a week, sometime around showtime. Just have a discussion. Nothing's off the board. Just have a great topic and talk about cool space-related stuff. So that's going to be really cool. Coming out very shortly, most likely this weekend, is going to be a new feature of Spacevidcast called Spacevidcast Founders. It's an extension of Spacevidcast Epic. Now, what Founders are is it's a one-time subscription to Epic. It's a lifetime membership to any programs that Spacevidcast creates, even above and outside of Spacevidcast Epic, and there are only a certain number of seats available for Founders.